clean, man.
So just got back from Cars and Coffee in South Bay. It was a pretty good turnout today. It was my second time there actually. Headed out with my buddy Vince and his Evo 8. It was a pretty good mix of a bunch of different kind of cars, like muscle cars, old school JDM cars, some newer cars, drift cars. There was a crazy E36 M3 track car that had a LS swap in it. A bunch of old school rotaries. But yeah, we just got back. I'm at home now. Gonna show you guys the AP2 gauge cluster that we installed in the NSX. The kit's actually made by Johan out in Sweden. He had prototyped the first kit for the 91 to 94s, which are really popular. His kits are super easy to install, plug and play. They work flawlessly. He actually had reached out to me to help him test out the 95's kit, because the wiring scheme changed a little bit. So I will show you guys the comparison of the AP2 gauge cluster and the stock gauge cluster. I went for the AP2 instead of the AP1 because I just kind of like the way the AP2 looks. Plus the 8000 red line matches the stock NSX red line. The AP1 is pretty popular as well because it looks more like the F1 style gauge cluster with the RPMs going all the way across the range, but our cars don't go up to 9,000. So anyways, let's go take a look at the cluster inside the car and I'll give you guys a quick review of it. And here is the stock gauge cluster. It has the classic 90s Honda look and feel to it. The 8000 red line on the manuals. I believe fuel cutoff was 8200. I am keeping the stock cluster to swap in my car just in case I ever decide to sell the car later down the road, but I doubt I'll ever let this car go. This was the visor shield that also comes off of it. Here is the illumination, actually it's not LED, it's incandescent bulbs. Since the S2000 cluster is digital, it doesn't need to be lit separately from above. So let's take a look at inside the car. For install, it was super straightforward. There's a knee bolster right here that comes off. Just gotta take it from, it's held on by clips. There's also a plastic panel underneath here that comes off first. Then this comes out. You slide your hand underneath to get these buttons out, which was the traction control button and the light dimming buttons. Once that comes off, You have access to the screws right here. Johan's website has actually an awesome instructional video. It's 3 parts. I followed that, and this kit was literally plug and play. Taking off the panels was probably the hardest part. Once I got everything off, the gauge cluster slips right in. You plug in the 2 wire harnesses that he created, and the car is ready to go. Alright, so here's the AP2 cluster installed. You can see that it has your typical temperature, fuel gauge, odometer, and of course the sweeping tachometer for the RPMs, along with the digital speedometer. Let's see what features. So if I turn on the headlights, it dims into night mode. The parking brake's up, but if I pull it down, it goes out. And one thing about the unit for this 95 that I was mentioning earlier that's different on the earlier models is because there's a Targa roof that comes off, there's a security feature that Johan programmed in. So if I undo the Targa, you'll notice that warning light comes out right there. And then if I close it back up, it goes away. Now there's a traction control button. If I turn it off, right now it's obviously default on. If I turn it off, there'll be that warning light to let me know that's the traction control light. So turn that back off or back on. Revs. Seatbelt is obviously showing because I'm not wearing my seatbelt right now. I'm inside my garage. And if I open the door comes out. If I open the hatch or the trunk, the same trunk light comes on. That light comes on. And yeah, it's fully functional. It's awesome. This kit, if you have an NSX, I know it's been popular on other Hondas as well. I've seen them swapped into EGs, EKs, a couple of DC Integras. I think there was even a CRX that I saw online that had an S2K cluster swap. But yeah, this gauge cluster, in my opinion, adds the perfect modern update to it while still kind of looking classic Honda. It's not as fancy as, let's say, some of the new Lexuses or maybe even the Lambos and Ferraris that have like full digital meters, but I think it adds a nice touch while still retaining a classic Honda feel. I actually like the way it sits, even in this gauge, the gauge surround. There you have it. It's a straightforward cluster swap. Johan made it super easy. I'm sure there's other kits out there that I've seen, and some of them seem to be plug and play as well. But as far as the NSX goes, I can say confidently this is probably the best S2000 cluster swap kit available on the market. I've talked to several other owners who have done the swap on their cars, and again, the installation was a breeze. They all love it. They like how it updated the interior while still keeping that Honda feel. And yeah, I think it's one of my favorite mods on this car so far. We've been getting a lot of DMs about showing a video on this gauge cluster on our Instagram page. So that's the AP2 gauge cluster in the NSX. Another huge shout out to Johan for making such an awesome plug and play kit and just being a great asset to the NSX community. Truly appreciate it. Stay tuned with us. Next week we'll be picking up a very rare exhaust for the NSXs. Produces a very high-pitched F1 type of sound, and that's the exact sound that I've been looking for. Got the test pipes in hopes that it would get me there, but it wasn't quite there yet. Luckily, timing worked out. So picking that up next week, we'll be installing that on the car and then sharing some sound clips. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and leave any comments or questions you might have for us, and we'll see you then.